The Rinnegan is not only the craziest dojutsu in the entire series, but is also far crazier than you thought. So today, let's explain the Rinnegan in depth and show the implications you might have missed. Subscribe, shooting for 20k, let's go. Long ago, when Jiraiya assumed the role of taking guardianship over 3 young Amegakure orphans during the midst of arguably the most terrible conflict the world had seen up until that point, besides perhaps some of the Warring States period, with none of the 3 hailing from any prominent clan except for Nagato Uzumaki. The young boy, however, was not any ordinary shinobi. He was born with the Rinnegan, or so he thought, and he mastered literally all of the ninjutsu that Jiraiya, a Sannin, taught him. And commentating on that, Data Book 3 states, the ocular jutsu said to have been possessed by the founder of Shinobi, the Sage of Six Paths. Renegon, characterized most notably by the ripple pattern that spreads in the eye, is considered the most sublime of the 3 great ocular jutsu, which include Sharingan and Byakugan. The possessor of this eye, said to be the creator of all ninjutsu, mastered every one of the 5 great changes in nature, possibly implying that the user of the Rinnegan then takes on traits of Hagoromo, or a more Six Paths and godlike nature, fitting with how the Sannin sage even posits that the boy may be the literal reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths, who, like Hashirama, was seen as basically myth and fairy tale for what if might have actually been possible, physically speaking, with these myths even holding to things like the sage creating every jutsu known to date, with this young child even using his wind style to pop a Jiraiya clone. And Nagato would then go on to literally bomb the strongest nation in the entire world with basically a single attack, after also having murdered both Jiraiya and the strongest Jonin in Konoha, Kakashi, and then even taking on half the Nine Tails with a literal planetoid sealing ninjutsu. And yet, that Nagato wasn't even the original owner of the eye, and couldn't even utilize it to its maximum potential. And yet still, in Data Book 4, it remarks that the Renegon's power transcends human intellect, which previously was of a similar statement for all of the Bijou in the eyes of Chiyo. And if you actually think of this, you'll realize that when Obito declares war on the entire world, what's the easiest power he should seek if he is to fight all 5 nations? The Rinnegan. Nagato serves as a very important example and display of what the baseline for the Rinnegan is actually capable of. Nagato gains numerous abilities such as Shinra Tensei and Bansho Tenni, the ability to manipulate gravitational forces, allowing for Nagato to push or pull you into other attacks, or even amplify how large these are to such an extent he could use a chaotic Shinra Tensei and blow up an entire village. He gains access to the animal path, which has numerous different animals for more pressure on your opponent to deal with, including a dog who replicates every time it's damaged, a panda, bird, ox, centipede, rhino, a chameleon, and even a crab that could fire out ninjutsu automatically. Although, what most people don't know is that Nagato may have another far more monstrous one, being the Destroyer, who is called that for the fact that his power rivals that of a Bijou, which Kishimoto shows this design in the post-chapter conceptual drawings later in the war arc. But regardless, let's digress back to the eye being foretold as a defining trait of the god who reduces all to naught, or the savior of the world, that the Rinnegan isn't like the Byakugan or Sharingan in their perceptions of surroundings and movements, but is actually instead, it's literally almost always forcing its wielder to see the causal constructs of the shinobi system. I'm sure you guys have all heard by now that Rinnegan basically just means Samsara Eye. However, obviously something that's a little bit more deeper is that every single person who gets it tries to forcefully alter the shinobi system. Hagoromo tries to forcefully spread chakra across the land for ninjutsu. Madara tried to forcefully induce the world and its people into a world of illusion, of ignorant perfection. Nagato then sees himself as a god for then having the eye, and a god who must bring divine retribution on the shinobi nations who cursed his life so violently. However, notice that the Rinnegan is a ripple design with a center different to that of the others, because in some real sense, the Rinnegan users also tend to lose their own center, their own agency, focusing only on the cyclical system surrounding them. And Sasuke is the best example of this concept, and even moreover, the complete insanity of the Rinnegan. Sasuke and Naruto fundamentally each just got Six Paths chakra, which then manifested in such a way that they could acclimate to it in the ways they most often do. Naruto through Senjutsu and Sasuke through ocular prowess. Just like when Naruto first learned Sage Mode and Sasuke, the MS, where their ever-increasing powers, according to Viz Volume 45 cover, then allows for them to grow to a level far beyond anything they've ever imagined, although equal to one another, despite the two amps growing in the opposite manner, where Naruto gets all the power at once but then has to later acclimate to his power, and Sasuke gets more power as he acclimates to that which he already has. And so, with the Renegon, I actually want to point out something real quick. Notice how after immediately getting their amps, Naruto then multiplies his 6-pass power with KCM2, and Sasuke then becomes a perfect match and then arguably even a superior 2 as the fight progresses, leading to the natural conclusion that Sasuke would do a KCM2 difference better than Naruto whenever he murder punched Madara prior. Where them showing similar ability actually to Naruto and how he could literally just grab the chakra rods from Tobirama. Wherein Naruto can also now literally feel Sasuke's passive 6-pass power from across the entire battlefield, which also goes to support the two getting the same amp, as Naruto even calls it the other half of the chakra, which doesn't mean it's half of Hagoromo's chakra, but the two each have half of the total distributed chakra. Hence to why the 15th anniversary guidebook states the two had both gotten the greatest powers. The greatest powers, one being a Rinnegan. Sasuke then, in ocular-based fashion, then used the Eminote for the first time. And I really don't think you guys realize how stupid this ability is. And I'm serious. Along with the vision that the Renegon actually provides, which is really noteworthy, as Databook 4 makes a note that Naruto's sensory allows him to basically grasp the literal laws of the universe, as is to say that his sensory extends to even metaphysical constructs, and yet still, Sasuke, on the other hand, might just be able to see them in a similar manner, like how he later makes the remark about teleporting infinite distances, implying that he could see the finitude of that which he's going to swap with. And still, regardless, Sasuke could actually see the Limbo clones perfectly, which are described by Databook 4 as imperceptible phantoms that exist in a realm adjacent to yet far removed from reality. Essentially, Sasuke is perceiving and fighting a Renegon ability that allows fighters from different realities to battle in this world. And Madara even then realizes how insane Sasuke is for being able to see these, realizing who the true threat is here. And what I want to point out is how far removed Sasuke is from everyone else, basically in this entire fight in a damage done to damage received ratio, specifically because his Renegon alone. And let's go back a bit, before Madara began panicking when he fires out his lightning and Sasuke teleports away, where Madara says, "No, it's not that he moved," noting how Sasuke's Eminote isn't like the flying Raijin, which is stated to be flied across space and time, space-time movement that's not even comparable to body flicker and how it opens up a subspace. His ability is different. It is literally pure teleportation that's far better than the former's one that's stated to transcend concepts like space and distance themselves in Databook 3's glossary. Again, showing just how crazy the Renegon is. And then, seeing Sasuke's ability, he charges to steal his eye, which he perceives to be greater than his own Renegon, which he thought was far above Kakashi's spatial warping Kamui eye, and yet notice what happens. Sasuke, without even moving, completely kebabs Madara, stabbing him straight through the chest. Even when Madara goes to take Kakashi's eye, Sasuke is on his ass, and Madara states, "Sasuke sure is quick," before literally getting sliced in half. Meaning that Sasuke, against one Rinnegan Madara, was never scraped when Madara was stabbed through the heart, hit with Chidori, forced to summon the Phantoms, and blitzed only to be sliced in half. That's the power of the Renegon. No, that's the power of one Renegon ability. And what was the only reason that Madara was able to stay alive when fighting two stronger fighters? His Limbo. Another Renegon ability. And the reason I attribute such to the Renegon is for the fact that its best explanation for why he only used it once getting the Renegon in his alive body and not in his Edo is because, like the summoning of the Gedo statue, projections can't do it, and the real thing has to be present. So Edo Tensei and dead bodies with projections simply can't. Even much later, his ability to see beyond the literal universe and into adjacent planes of reality, and possibly the metaphysical constructs that guide the universality and nature itself, is supported in how, against Momoshiki, he could literally see and think when time itself has stopped. And speaking of such an opponent, who is strong enough to make Kaguya believe she needed a 100,000 strong army just to take on, we see that fatigued Naruto can put the hands on Momoshiki, which Sasuke should also be able to do. Hence to why, when Naruto hits him away, Sasuke isn't gonna let him go anywhere, spawning right behind bro just to completely blast him away. Kind of like how he did to Naruto in the Final Valley, where he shoots a fireball, Naruto blocks it, and then Sasuke swamps out with a minor flame behind Naruto. And even going back to the Momoshiki fight, in the anime, we see that Momoshiki's trapping of Sasuke was nothing. Why? Because this dude doesn't need to obey basically anything relative to spatial positions, whether that's in this reality or another. So in truth, the Renegon is absolutely insane, and when it was previously creating literal planetoid structures that could allow for Nagato to possibly transcend Itachi and the like, this was realistically nothing. On that note, the ceiling of the Chubaku for Sasuke is even more insane, as he could set you to be the core, leaving no weakness to the technique. Sasuke's Renegon also allowed for him to have some pseudo-omnidirectional genjutsu for all the tailed beasts, who he then placed into their own Chubaku Tensei, to which he would then go to draw upon the same level of the Sage of Six Paths himself, but in the reverse, making it so that in this situation, his Renegon allowed for him to essentially formulate the Ten Tails into himself temporarily without any drawbacks. Sasuke even in this moment acknowledges his Renegon as something that would now allow for him to reincarnate his soul like Indra and literally affect the shinobi world on a more permanent level, or at least a level concerning some couple thousand years maybe, as if he'd already been the son of the old sage himself. And so take note how in just a couple hours, realistically, Sasuke went from a sub-Jibito, sub-blind Madara fighter to basically eclipsing not just Madara, but basically every single shinobi to ever live, and even possibly transcending Hagoromo, this mythical figure himself, almost entirely from his Renegon. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think the Sharingan is better in its Mangekyo form? Maybe I can make a video on that. Or do you think actually we might even want to talk about some of Urashiki's Renegon abilities or Momo's and whatnot? But I really just wanted to touch on Sasuke's here because I thought it's just a bit too nuts not to. If you guys have learned anything, please subscribe, watch all the way to the end, then subscribe. Duh. Also, like the video, hype it so more people could see it, but more importantly, may God bless you all. Love you guys.